It's very true that we're always anxious to improve our circumstances. We're always anxious to fix the things around us. But so many times we're not anxious to improve ourselves and fix ourselves. And so the whole teaching of this is that when we start in life, you probably started off like I did, and that is with goal setting. And well, let me just tell you a story. Kirk Campmeyer, when I was in my early 20s, asked me what my plan for growth was. And the bottom line is I didn't have a plan for growth. I didn't know that I was supposed to have a plan for growth. He was the first one that kind of made me aware that, John, growth's not automatic. If you're going to grow, you have to grow intentionally. And so I said, okay, I'm going to grow intentionally, but I didn't know how to grow. I mean, no one ever, it's one thing to ask yourself if you have a growth plan, but I didn't have a growth plan. And I went to my friends and asked them if they had a growth plan, and none of them did. And so I desperately began to say, well, how do I grow myself? How do I develop myself? And so I brought something very personal to me today because I'm holding in my hand where I started my growth plan. This is the Dynamics of Personal Goal Setting, and it's Personal Success Planner, and it was by Paul Meyer, Success Motivation Institute. And this is where I started. This is my first, in fact, paid $799 for this, okay? And when I paid $799 for this, that year I made, I started off as a pastor. That year I made $4,800. So this was huge. This was a lot of money, and I had to save up for it. I didn't have that kind of money. And so really 6 months of trying and saving, we finally got to this. And so this is where I started. And it's just very important. It's very special to me. But I started my personal growth plan with a goal-setting teaching. And it's got cassette tapes in here, and it's got workbooks, and I worked it through. And I really went through this personal growth plan 3 times. The first time I got it, I thought I went back to get some more, and it took me, so I went through it 3 times. But the reason I brought this with me today is for a couple reasons. One is this is when people say, what's the best investment you've ever made in your life? The best investment I ever made in my life is right here. The $799 I paid, which was an awful lot of money for me, the $799 I paid has been worth millions of dollars for me. The return is incalculable. And the reason I say that is because I'm going to challenge you in a personal growth way to invest in yourself. In fact, if you wouldn't invest in yourself, why should anyone else invest in you? I'm always amazed at people who want me to scholarship them. Want to, could you kind of give me a free lift? And my whole process, no. If you and I don't bet on ourselves, why should anyone else bet on us? The first bet that I ought to pay is on myself. And so this is my first kit, and so I brought it with you today to say that I literally started my whole growth life, goal setting. And isn't it interesting? I'm talking to you about how do you and I leader shift? How do we shift from being a goal setter to a person that just really works on growth? Because here's what I realized when I started in my growth plan. What I realized was this: the goals I achieved were not as great or as important as the growth that I was receiving in my life. That yes, I was setting goals and I was stretching towards those goals, and it was a good thing, but there was something happening internally to me that was more than places I wanted to go and numbers that I wanted to reach. And I experienced 2 what I call growth changes that I want to give to you. Because I think that when you get on a growth journey that's intentional, you'll discover these same changes also. And the first one is very simple, and that is that I went from growth in everything to growth in essential things. When I started off with my growth, I just said, well, I want to learn everything. And so I just read and studied and listened to tapes, and I just did everything I could to grow. And I was just grow. And one day it hit me that was never going to get me to where I wanted to be. That I had to go from trying to grow in every area and everything to grow, get essential. What are the main things that you just need to grow in? Now, for me, in my 20s, I came to the conclusion that if I could be successful in relationships, if I could become successful in training and equipping people, if I could have an incredible attitude that would help me be an overcomer, and if I could learn to lead and increase influence, if I could do those 4 things, relationships, equipping, attitude, leadership, if I could grow in those 4 areas, then I probably could be successful. And so I committed that these are the areas I'm going to grow in. And so I began to eliminate a lot of stuff so that I could grow in what I would call, for me, the main stuff. And I would say to each one of you in all of our sites and here locally that what you've got to do is when you start your growth plan, becoming intentional, you got to ask yourself, what are the areas I'm going to grow in? You can't grow in everything. You don't even want to grow in everything, but you got to grow in the essential things. For me, REAL, relationships, equipping, attitude, and leadership. And later on, I added communication because I knew that I would spend my life as a connector and a communicator. And because I am a person of faith. And pretty much for 40 plus years, these have been my 6 essentials. Learning how to connect with people, learning how to train, equip others, having an attitude to help me overcome, learn how to lead and expand influence, learn how to communicate well, and then become the person of faith that I really want to become. This is where I really spent my time. The second change I had in the area of growth was I went from growth with a timeline to growth without a finish line. Now, this was an amazing experience that I had because when I started my growth journey, I thought in terms of, well, okay, there'll be a finish line somewhere. There'll be a time when I've accomplished that. There'll be a time where I have achieved this. There'll be a time where I have arrived. And so I had a timeline out there. And I heard Earl Nightingale say that if you spent an hour a day, every day, on a certain given subject, now that's back to the essentials, REAL, that stuff. If you spend an hour a day, every day on a certain given subject for 5 years, you could become an expert on that subject. Now, that really excited me because at this time I'm falling in love with leadership. I'm buying into the idea everything rises and falls on leadership. And so here we go. I'm excited, and I said, okay, I'm going to spend an hour a day, every day for 5 years to become an expert on the subject of leadership. And that's what I did. Now, back then, there were not a lot of leadership books out. They were mainly management books. If you go back in the 70s and 80s, you go into bookstores, you didn't find leadership books. You found management books. And so I read some management books, and it kind of got me going in the right way. But I would talk to people that were leaders. I would try to do leadership experiences an hour a day. And every day, every week, as I would go through this process, I'd ask myself this question, how long will it take? Well, Earl Nightingale said it'd take 5 years. Well, I'm not only reading and studying and learning and experiencing, guess what else I'm doing? I'm counting down. I think I'm Mr. Cape Canaveral. And I'm going, 5, wow, 4, 3, and I can smell it. It's out there. I'm getting close. There's going to be some light in this tunnel pretty soon. And I was about halfway in this 5-year run of countdown until something happened. It wasn't anything I read. It wasn't anything that somebody came and sat beside me and mentored me on or kind of gave me some thoughts or advice. About halfway in this journey, the inside of me switched. I was receiving so much value from my personal growth. I was learning so much about leadership. I was growing so much internally that I stopped counting. And I left the question, how long will it take? And I picked up the question, how far can I go?
John and I had a vision to create a growth environment, kind of like what caused John to grow. He says the biggest decision he's made was the decision to grow himself. Mm-hmm. And at 76 now, he's continuing to grow himself. By the way, he just had a birthday 2 days ago. Happy birthday, John.
Happy birthday, John.
And so he said personal growth, the decision to grow himself was the biggest thing. So right. John and I created this growth environment. We call it Maxwell Leadership Growth. And this is an online platform. It's an app, an Android or an Apple app that you can download called Maxwell Leadership Growth app. And Tracy, you're one of our guides. In fact, you're the guide over relationships. Good to see you today. Look, if you're watching by YouTube, we just shook hands. That's a very relationship thing to do right there.
I'd be hugging you if there wasn't this table between us.
That's the truth. But anyway, there was a very, very real reason that John and I felt like you were the right person to be a guide in that tribe. By the way, we want you to be a part of that. Download that. You'll hear weekly lessons and things from Tracy all throughout that online platform, that growth app at Maxwell Leadership. But here's the reason I said all that. One, we want you to download, come join us. But two, I said that because isn't it true that kind of the first leg, if you will, of relationship is your relationship with yourself? Absolutely. And so I just thought, man, before we even get into some of your questions for me of how we're applying this lesson here at Maxwell Leadership, talk to us just a little bit about that importance of relationship with self.
Well, I think that is really one of the first places that I applied John's lessons in my life. I was 21, 22 years old when I first heard about John Maxwell. And I thought I was going to learn all these fancy schmancy business things, whatever that was going to look like. And really what it was about working on myself. You know, one of the things John is famous for saying is, if it doesn't work at home, don't export it. And so what that said to me as a 21, 22-year-old was work on myself and work on the relationships closest to me before I took it outside of my home. And so I love how he closed out by saying, growing yourself, which we really talk about that being the first relationship pillar, the relationship that we have with ourselves. Yeah. And it's not selfish to grow yourself. In fact, it makes me a better person in every single relationship beyond myself, which is everyone else. Yeah. It makes me better in every relationship I'm in when I grow myself and make myself the next best version of myself each and every day. So I love this lesson, starting with yourself. Yeah. And when he kicked it off with that, I'd love to dive in. Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, I am. But let me say this, because again, I assume everybody in the world is an app person, an Android or an Apple app. But I do want to give you the website in case you want to go download the platform online. It's growth.maxwellleadership.com. Growth.maxwellleadership.com. Yeah, let's dig in, Tracy.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
But please do come and grow with us, because if you grew up in a home where you didn't have that growth environment, that's what we're here for. Or if you did grow and you want to like next level yourself, it starts with growing ourselves. Yep. So that's what we're talking about today. And John kicks it off with a quote from Henry Ford where he says, "Before anything else, getting ready is the secret of success." So he kind of tips us off to the secret sauce. Yeah. And you've shared many times with us on the podcast, Mark, about your past and before you came and worked with John. So for those of us who know the story, maybe you can, or don't know the story, maybe you can give a little bit of that for context. But what did you do? What did getting ready look like for Mark Cole?
Yeah, you know, I've always been very blessed with genetics to always have a drive. I feel like at 5 years old, I could envision this running leadership, running something, taking some people on a journey they've never been on before. I've just always had these visions many, many, many years ago. I've told those stories, no doubt, here. But I think even though I had that high drive and that high passion and that high giftedness to take people on a journey, I think the thing I was lacking the most, that I think is absolutely the most important ingredient, is intentionality. I did not have intentionality around growing, and specifically, I didn't have intentionality around growing myself. Now, I put high demands on everyone else because I drove myself to high demands. Right. But the idea of intentionally growing came to my awareness 30 years of age. A guy that was leading me here at John Maxwell's company said, "What's your growth plan?" And I went, "I don't have one. I don't know what those are. Do you have a template?" They did have a template, and that became my growth plan. And by the way, the template all was derived around things that would impact me from the inside out.
I love that. I love that. So for those of us who, if you had that in childhood, that feeling, or maybe you were considered a bossy kid.
Yeah. That was me. Redheaded
me
boss
too.
kid. Yes.
Me too. I wasn't redheaded, but I was considered bossy. My brother says one of the things that my younger brother is that I would say all the time is Brad's not allowed. Brad's not allowed. Brad's not allowed. Did I say Brad and Tracy weren't allowed? No. Brad's not allowed.
Well, what's funny is you were the older sibling there.
That's right.
I was the baby of 5, and I would say Steve, Philip, Joy, Danny are not allowed. Just me. I've got the coat of many colors, so it's my turn here.
That's exactly right. But if if you're getting to that place in your life where you're near 30, or maybe you're older than 30 and somebody has never asked you, do you have a growth plan? Yeah. And that's what we're talking about today. That's what the app is about. That's what the platform is about online, so that you can come and join us and grow with us.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, then he talks about the bookends of success are starting and finishing. And then he talks about the value of starting with yourself. And he hits on something that is so often quoted, and that's the Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. I have quoted that so many times. So maybe you're listening to this podcast and it's the first time you've ever heard it, or maybe you're hearing it fresh for the very first time today with new ears and a new perspective for where you're at in your life. So I'm curious, Mark, how you would recommend for somebody who is hearing that for the first time or with fresh ears again, how you would recommend for somebody to start, to begin to be the change, those first steps.
Well, so there's a lot of tools. I'm going to talk about tools in answering of your question.
Good.
But
love tools.
Because there's a lot of application. We spend every day of our life thinking of applications to get people to start growing themselves, right? Yeah. So I'm going to give you 2 or 3. We've already given you one, the Maxwell Growth app. I think that when you are starting a growth mindset, I think you really have to make a determination that it is going to start with me. And I'm not going to worry about external recognition, external promotion, external celebration until it locks in inside of me. In fact, good. I can remember, Tracy, on several years, you all know, if you've been a part of the podcast for very long, you know that the end of the year, the beginning of the next year is just magical to me. It truly gives me a chance to focus on some things. Well, I can remember several years starting a new year off with great anticipation, great excitement. It was going to be the best year yet. And I would share with people around me my plan for the year. And much like some of you watching on YouTube, or some of you listening right now, maybe some of you are still in the gym and it is the end of February and you're still in the gym with your New Year's resolution. Tracy is a fan of you.
So proud of you.
So maybe you're listening on the treadmill right now, on the elliptical. Maybe that's what you're doing. But you've had those people that are wet blankets. Mm-hmm. They've got a fire extinguisher with your name on it. Okay, you get a little fire, they're gonna put it out for you. And I know for me, there's been some years to where I came out of the gates ready to go, and to where a sideways word or a less than affirming word put my fire out. Mm-hmm. Then there's those years I get the same wet blankets. I get the same fire hoses, the people that want to extinguish my fire. And I just look at them and say, watch me. Watch me. You know why? Because I settled it within that that's where I'm going. And the years where I settled it within that an external affirmation or an external accolade was nothing, good or bad, because I knew where I was going, are the years. So my first thing to you, and I'm going to give you a couple of tools with the question, Tracy, that you asked me. But I want you to start within, resolve it. Are you settled that you are going to make a difference this year for yourself? Have you started it there? Now, one of the things that I am passionate about is the book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Absolutely. I'm holding it up right now for those of you on YouTube watching. This book was the first Maxwell book I read, and it absolutely changed my life. I would start with something. Start with the book. Maybe the app is not your thing, even though it's free. Maybe it's not your thing. Go to the app, pick up this book. We'll put the book in the show notes. Take 15% off if you use the keyword podcast. We'll do all the stuff for you, but you're going to need to go pick up the book and decide. One other thing is we're going to have a growth day. Tracy and I are going to be a part of it March the 13th. Yay. We're 2 weeks away. You can go right now and virtually sign up. Look at it. It's Maxwell Growth Day, and you can go and be a part of that. One final thing that I want to say on this, Tracy, is when we want to start something, it is mind over matter. I'll never forget the time. I've shared with this the story before of my first marathon. I did not finish that marathon because of the training. I didn't finish that marathon because I was healthy. I finished that marathon because I settled it in my mind, no matter what, I'm going to finish the marathon. And I did with walking pneumonia and coughing up blood. Not highly recommended.
Yikes.
But you know why?
That's not highly recommended.
That's not highly recommended. However, what I did was I fought the battle inside my mind first, and much of my life followed along, including my ailing body, because I made the decision right here that I'm going to do it.
That's right. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so the first 3 points are, I'm not saying, though, that's so good of it that you did your marathon with walking pneumonia. Did you end up okay?
Oh, yeah.
mean, let's make sure that they know you're okay. But those 3 points, again, is it really starts with settling it within yourself. Those agreements that we make with ourselves are so important, I think, because until we settle it with ourselves, anything can whip us one way or the other. So that and the book and then our personal growth day, it's investing in yourself. You have to get to a point where you're willing to invest in yourself. And sometimes that takes time, money, resources, but it's important.
It is.
Hi, John Maxwell here. Today's word on Minute with the Maxwell is belief. Great word. Somebody recently was talking and trying to describe me and said, John, you're a belief magnet. And I thought about that for a moment. And in fact, I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, you have such belief that you draw people to you. They see your belief in yourself. They see your confidence in yourself. And it's a sense of almost security. It's an attraction to people to come around you. Well, as I think of the word belief today, I'm in it with Maxwell, I'm thinking about you. And I'm thinking about you believing yourself, because here's what I know. I've known a lot of people that were very successful because no one else believed in them. But I don't know anybody that's ever been successful if they didn't believe in themselves. See, you can be successful if other people don't believe in you. You can overcome those odds and that opposition. But if you don't believe in yourself, no way. You just aren't going to make it. And so I want to talk to you just for a moment about believing in you. The reason this is so important is that on the other side of personal belief are opportunities and possibilities. And you have to go through the belief door to find those possibilities, to find those opportunities. If I could, what I would really do is I would loan you my belief. I really would. Because when we started the John Maxwell team, we started it for people that wanted to improve their life. And so therefore, I said, I'm going to believe in people that maybe don't even believe in themselves. And I'm going to start an organization that will equip them, add value to them, and will give them a sense of personal belief, because now they have a way to better their life. That's what I want for you. So the best thing I can do for you, if I can't loan you my belief, at least I can tell you that if you believe in yourself, it'll take you a lot further than if you don't believe in yourself. In fact, I want to encourage you. Consider the John Maxwell team. I think your personal belief would increase itself if you were in an environment of people that believed in themselves and believed in others. And that's what happens when you join the John Maxwell team. Thousands of people believing in themselves. Just come alongside and just rub up against them. I think that belief is contagious. I think it's for you. I want you to have it.
Well, today's topic, we're going to talk about, I love where we're going. We're going to do a little mini series here. I think there's 3 books that for what we do in organizational development and culture and working with teams that really stand out when it comes to that. One, obviously being the 5 levels of leadership. Right. That's our methodology. The second one is Leaders' Greatest Return. It's really talking about developing people and the power of that. And the third one is leaderships. These are shifts that leaders have to make often. And so today's topic is why leaders have to make the shift from goals to growth. So I love where we're going on this around leadership.
Yeah, the whole idea about shifts that a leader needs to make comes up quite a bit in coaching conversations. One that I think we've done a podcast on it before was on, and it's number one, the first shift in when you read the book, about making the shift from being a soloist to being a conductor. And so that if you're used to, you're an individual contributor and you're really good at what you do, and one day they tap you and say, hey, we'd like you to lead the department or lead a team. Now you're the conductor of that orchestra. You're not just playing in that orchestra. It's a completely shift in how you think and how you act to get not just your own performance, but to get performance from others. So I thought leadership, as well as some of these shifts that we're going to cover in the next couple of episodes, will be things that I see quite a bit.
And as leaders, we have to be open to change, and we have to be changing. And that's why I love this. Like, we should always be thinking about the shifts that we're making. So today we're going to talk about where the shift from goals to growth that John's going to lead us through with this content pieces that we're just going to kind of take back and forth here. And when you start out as a leader, we talk about this in the 5 levels of leadership, where we get a position and then what do? We immediately want to just start producing. We want to start hitting our KPIs, and we make a mistake to where we kind of maybe don't grow, but we also just kind of jump right over connecting with our people. And so we think that kind of hitting our numbers and the KPIs, whatever your KPIs might be, will make you a better leader. It'll increase your value. And while it does, and from an external standpoint, really from an internal standpoint, you got to be growing on the inside to be able to keep producing and growing outside and hitting those KPIs. And so we are big here at Maxwell Leadership about it being a growth focus versus a goal focus.
Yeah, I love that shift from growth outward to growth inward.
It's good.
I mean, to me, that's saying if you shoot for goals, that you'll achieve the goals, but you may not grow. And it's funny, that meeting I had this morning with the client, they're talking about we get so focused on the scoreboard, on the revenue or the expenses or whatever what your measurement is, we forget to look at the daily growth that we're making as individuals to work toward that. So how do you make this leadership? And so I don't think it's 5, I think it's maybe 7.
Doggone it.
I know you're being disappointed in me. But number one, embracing change, that growth means change. And if you want to become a better leader and a better person, then you have to shift from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And mindset really is important in this shift. I think that I've got to be, we talked a little bit on the previous podcast about fixed versus growth. Carol Dweck and the research she does, but I can't say enough for having that mindset that I'm here to grow. Everything I do. Yeah,
and I remember what I just said a minute ago. Having influence and being a leader, it doesn't require change. Change is going to happen, right? So get ready for it. And we have this phrase that we say where if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance a whole lot less. And so you just need to be aware of that and know that that's going to happen. And so you got to embrace it, as Perry talked about, as we begin to think about this from a growth standpoint. And the fixed mindset leaders, they don't like it. They don't like necessarily the change. And so they think it leads to, well, it's about failure and I am failing and I need to change. All those things that kind of go with that when we hear the word change and how does it affect me? Versus if we have a growth mindset, back on this mindset thing about change, then we'll embrace the change. We'll embrace the learning and the growth that we will go through. I mean, you think about this, anything that we change or do a little bit differently, at the end of the day, we've learned something vering having that repetitive
it doesn't mean
mindset.
We like change any more than anybody else.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But I see it in a different light, is that I'm going to go, and you think about it, your whole life is about change. You wouldn't be where you are if you didn't change. Yeah. So, but we look at it with a different view. You say, I'm going to go through this because I'll be better on the other side.
I mean, the only reason that we now have over 3 million downloads is because you heard my very first one and you said, Chris, I think we need to embrace change.
I love you.
So I've grown through this process, and I give all that credit to you. And what we've created today, though, right? Like just continually changing. So
right. Well, the word that you made me think of is the word teachable. That
there we go. Yeah, there we go. And so our next point here, great segue.
You were
right?
so teachable.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic characteristic for a leader. And so, the question I always ask people on a coaching call, how teachable are you? And so how do you become more teachable if you decide and I think it builds trust with people when you say, when they view you as a teachable leader, that you don't have all the answers. You're always seeking to learn more. You're asking them to help you grow. You're observing. You're curious. Lots of things like that. But you're looking for growth opportunities in every situation. You ask questions. You are curious. You seek out information from others. You file. John's big about filing what you've learned so that you can recall it. And then my favorite is passing on what I'm learning to others. I notice that the more I teach people, the more it sticks with me to do that. So,
real quick, before you go to the next point, one of the things I was thinking about under this and having a teachable spirit and being okay with the failure side of things, which that's a strong word, but just the whole teachable spirit. We talk about this success cycle to where John talks about, hey, listen, try something, right? You're going to fail, then you're going to learn, then you're going to improve, then re-enter again. And so whether it's this podcast, whether it's leading a meeting, whether it's a new process or a system, be teachable through understanding that that's going to be a success cycle and a process that you're going to go through. Try it. Know you're going to fail. What are you going to learn? Be teachable through that. Then improve it and then re-enter and do it again.
I'm smiling because I was in a meeting yesterday and one of our teammates asked me, didn't you write about this on a podcast or a blog? I went, yeah, let's pull that up. And I pulled it up, and as she was looking at it, I was looking at it, I go, did I write this? It was like episode 12 or something.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. I go, oh my gosh.
At least it wasn't one when you said, hey, look, can we do this together?
All right.
Okay.
Hey, podcast listeners, do you have a clear plan for growth? Achieving big results most often does not require big life changes. Small improvements over time compound into big results. Download Clear by Maxwell Leadership. It's the new free app where our expert guides help you pace your leadership journey and set a clear plan for your growth. You can also find all sorts of resources on the Clear app, including this podcast, and information on upcoming events such as our International Maxwell Conference this August. This upcoming conference will be like no other, so be sure to download Clear by Maxwell Leadership in your app store and register today.
Okay, number 3, make your love for learning greater than your fear of failure. I thought that was an interesting teaching to say, how big is this fear that I may have that I might not get it right? That can I make that idea that I want to grow, I'm willing to grow greater than that. Don't count losses. He says, John says, don't count losses, count lessons. I thought that was pretty good.
I love that. Don't count losses, count the lessons. Because what do we do? Naturally, as human beings in the flesh, we go, man, I don't have this anymore. I lost that, or I didn't do this right. Versus, man, I learned this and I learned that. So I absolutely love that, which goes into a book, that John wrote. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yep.
And I just think it's a powerful lesson. Well, number 4 is develop relationships with other growing people. This may be one of the strongest points that we're going to talk about today, because a rising tide raises all boats. And I know I've had the privilege of working in and around this organization for a long time, over 23, 24 years. I started when I was 5. And just being around this environment, we're in a bubble, is what we call it. It's a leadership bubble. We're challenging personal growth all the time. But I think when you're around these type of people, the easier it is for you to grow and to get because it becomes contagious. And so, be the difference maker. Take that step and be that person for your team or your organization, and bring people around you. I was talking the other day with somebody, and we started talking about the fact that if you look at the people that you're hanging out with, what are the conversations about? Are they all about, man, you remember when we did that? Remember when it was this? Or, man, this is what I'm learning, and this is where I'm going, and this is what I'm trying. That right there, just the next conversation you're in when you go out, for a social event, you're hanging out with couples or people where just be aware of that and listen to that and the tone of the conversation, because you want to be around those that are saying, man, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm reading, you do that all the time to me, right? Like, this is what, I was reading this book the other day, I was listening to this and I learned that, and I'm just like, holy cow. So it just encourages me to be growing.
But that's two-way. And I was just thinking the same thing, is that you do that to me and our team. We're looking at what are you learning this week? What are you reading? And a week doesn't go by somebody asks me, what are you reading now? Even my coaching clients are now saying, hey, what should I be reading?
Yeah.
So that, because we're in these conversations that we all realize we've got some growth to do.
Yeah.
Number 5, develop greater humility. I remember we're going from goals to growth. How do I develop more humility? And this humility is really about the essence of being unafraid to admit when we're wrong or what we don't know, and being able to, it's like self-awareness and humility kind of tied in together here, about recognizing the gap that I could be filling by spending some time each day investing in me.
Yeah.
And when I admit that I'm wrong, then I'm on a path to discover what's right, and it just opens me up to learning more.
Which this is about self-awareness, and being having that humility to be open to that, and that feedback from other people, maybe also some tools. We often will talk to leaders and say, hey, the longer that you have led, you've been with the team, maybe you're in that fixed mindset, right? You're in that goal mindset, probably the more unaware you are of really what's going on,
right.
The pace of your growth, the pace of your leadership, what does it look like to be on the other side of your leadership? And so I think that humility side and the self-awareness is something that you should really look at when it comes to moving from goals to growth. Number 6, believe in yourself. This is just really about, do you believe that you're worth it? You listen to a podcast, you maybe listen to an Audible book, maybe you attend a workshop, maybe you begin some coaching. Like, believe in yourself, to invest in yourself and what you're learning. And when you believe in yourself and you invest in yourself, you'll begin to move from goals to growth.
Yeah, and the last one, I really would love your opinion on this before I let you wrap it up. But John used a phrase, and I thought it was interesting, about embrace layered learning.
Yeah.
And to me, you just gave a one part of that, which is, how do I do learning? Am I doing podcasts? Am I looking at books? But I'm also, for me, it's so much of what we do. I'm studying and I'm learning and I'm investing in me, and then I go out and apply it. I do experience and I try something, and I do it on a coaching call, or I do it in front of an audience. In my world, so much I do a lesson and I get feedback, and now I'm adding to that. So I feel like I'm layering. But I wonder, how do you see layered learning when John speaks of that?
Yeah, so this is just a continuous growth mindset, period. Piling on. This encompasses everything that we just talked about. Whereas if the previous 6, if you're doing them well and you're moving from goals to growth, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to continue to see growth principles and movement, right, laying on top of each other. And so you're going to continue to see that layered learning, which hey, take a chance, take a risk, learn something, and then you're going to learn something more. And then but if you never take that step and begin learning, you'll never have the opportunity to experience layered learning.
Yeah. I think, Coach Bill Walsh years ago, San Francisco 49ers, but he had a phrase that kind of upset people, because he said, the score will take care of itself. And I thought, no, you're the head coach. That's all we're about, is the score. And he said, no, if you invest in yourself, if you do the right things, if you are brilliant on the basics, if you're learning and growing and improving and growing and improving and growing and improving, the score will take care of itself. I thought, isn't that true? And we get so focused on the goal, the scoreboard, that we don't do the daily things we should be doing.
Yeah.
And that the goals will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I want to be a leader. I want to learn how to lead well. Where do I start? In fact, they'll say, what book do I begin with? And whenever they ask me that question, my answer always surprises them, because I tell people, if you really want to be a terrific leader, the first book that I've written a lot of them, on leadership, that you should read is The 21 Qualities of a Leader. Now, that's a very popular book. It sold millions of copies, but it's not by far one of my best-known books. And so when people say, oh, I'm surprised that you would have the 21 qualities of a leader, and here's why it's so important. The qualities that I'm going to teach you here in a moment, and I won't have time for 21, but I'll teach a few. The qualities are foundational for your leadership life. If you're just going to build a one-story house, you don't really need much of a foundation. In fact, you can just kind of put a cement slab underneath of it, and you can build that one story. You don't need a great foundation because you're not building a great building. You're just one story. But if you came to me and said, I really want to build a skyscraper, in other words, I want my leadership just to stretch to the heavens. I want to do big things in leadership. The first thing I would say to you is, you've got to get the foundation right. If the foundation is correct, you can build a skyscraper of leadership for your life. And the foundation are the qualities, because the qualities, those are the things that express who you are on the inside. The qualities are in such a way that they make you better on the inside, so you become better on the outside. They make you bigger on the inside, then you become bigger on the outside. And one of those qualities, I have time just maybe for 3 or 4, but one of those qualities is character. And character is so essential to who you are, because it's character that it makes you trustworthy. You see, a person with good character has authenticity. What you see is who they really are. A person with character has terrific integrity. They tell the truth. They keep their promises. They do what they say they will do. They become very trustworthy. And trustworthy is essential for great leadership. And when a person has good character, it is foundational for them. But it's not only foundational for them to build their leadership, it's foundational for you to build a relationship with them. Because you know that they have the character, the strength, the core, the anchor, the foundation that will really allow them to serve and do you very, very well. You see, when people are going to follow a leader, one of the questions they ask is, can I trust that person? Well, character is that quality that makes you, it's that quality that makes me trustworthy. So it's a beautiful thing. So I tell people, before you work on the outside of your leadership, work on the inside of your leadership. You know, another quality of a leader that I talk about in the 21 Qualities book is the quality of commitment. And it's so essential for leaders to be men and women of commitment. And why I say that is because commitment separates the doers from the dreamers. You see, in your business, a lot of times they talk about the dream. And, you take the dream, what do you want to become? Sometimes you post it on your refrigerator, and this is who I want to be in the future. And to have a dream is a good thing. But one of the things you're going to learn about the dream that you have is the dream doesn't come true because you have the dream. There has to be a quality that makes that dream a reality, and that quality is commitment. And if you're committed, it takes you from being a dreamer to a doer. If you're not committed, you're just a dreamer. And there are a lot of people who think that the dream is enough. It's not. You see, the dream is free, but the journey isn't. That's why people like to sit around the table and talk about what they would like to become, and they have these great dreams. But honestly, when you get up from the table, you've got to make it happen. See, dreams are free, but the journey's not. And since the journey, which is what brings you to the reality of that dream, it costs something, commitment is the core. Commitment is essential quality for you to have as a leader to make your dreams come true. Another quality that I express in the 21 Qualities of a Leader book is generosity. The willingness and the ability to give on the front end. A lot of times people say, well, I may give to that, but I'm going to see what I'm going to receive first. And a lot of people are saying, well, if I receive something, then I'll give. And they don't understand that sowing comes before reaping. No farmer ever went out to the fields that he hadn't worked, that he hadn't sown any seed in, and come fall look and say, well, I wonder what kind of crop I'm going to receive this time. It's impossible. You see, fall harvest is only a reality if there's been a spring sowing. It always begins with not what am I going to receive, but what am I going to give. I have an expression sometimes I use that I love, and that is, your candle loses nothing when it lights another. If I have a lit candle and I am generous towards you and I extend it to you and you can light your candle off of it, my candle doesn't go out. I just turn it on 2 lights instead of 1. And I think there's a scarcity mindset that many people say, well, if I give, I'm afraid I'm going to lose something, and they don't forget so many times that what they lose if they don't give is opportunity. You know, generosity opens the door to incredible opportunity. It opens up the door for us to have life change and to help change lives. And one of the ways that you build a successful business is to be extremely generous. Angela Arendt, who was the CEO of an incredible company in London, and then she became also number 4 with Apple, the highest paid female executive in the world. I think her last year she made $78 million. We were having lunch one day, and I said, Andrea, what's the best advice you ever received? And she said, my father taught me as a young child.
There's a difference. You see, nothing is great until a life is changed. You do understand that. So you can have a good conference, you can't have a great conference. Great is only what they do with it after the conference. You can have a good book, but the book becomes great when it changes the life. And so many times we count our victories before we have victories. We count our victories because we just looked good when we walked across the stage. And everybody clapped and everybody was happy, and we thought, oh my gosh, what a good conference. Everything escalates and gets better when the people get better. And if the people don't get better, it wasn't that good. And if the people don't change, if the people don't grow, and if the people just aren't reproducing, it never becomes great. See, leaders understand greatness begins with them and what they teach and inspire their people to be and do. But the result of greatness is in the proof of the people. It's in the people. So if you say, well, I'm a great leader, well, how many great leaders have you reproduced? So you're not a great leader because you have followers. You're a great leader because you've reproduced leaders. And so this is going to be a huge day. I'm promising you're going to fill pages of notes. Not just a page or 2. I don't know who does that, but you're going to fill pages of notes. You're going to have to you're going to have to go straight from here to a massage therapist. You're going to say, just work the hand. We just work the hand. I've been taking a lot of notes because one of the things we do in the John Maxwell Company, it's a reputation of mine to give you more than you can handle. You with me? Do you ever go to hear somebody speak and you just kind of sit there for a while and kind of hope for a miracle? You know what I mean? Just say, I know it will sometime get better. And you know, and have you ever sometimes one just walk up and say, you know what, you're not very good. Let me give you a couple thoughts here. Just say these, it'll help you. It'll take you to a new level, huh? Now, the reason I say that is we work very hard. You're here by invitation. I mean, we do these things quite a bit. We got to pack this thing out many, many times. But we just said, no, we want the right people in the room. We want the right people in the room because then it reproduces itself. So I've worked hard. I'm going to do the laws of growth. I'm curious, how many of you have the book, 15 Laws of Growth? Raise your hand. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's very good. You notice I didn't ask how many of you had read it? I'm delighted today to talk to you about some of the laws of leadership. And the first one I want to talk to you about is truly the first one I should talk to you about. Now, there are 15 of them, but you have to understand there's one that I think is foundational for the other 14. Not more important, but foundational. and that's the law of intentionality. And that's where we're going to begin today. The law of intentionality just basically says growth is the only guarantee that tomorrow is going to get better. Oh, isn't that good? If you're going to grow, and if I'm going to grow, we're going to grow intentionally. Now, I'm talking to leaders today. I love talking to people that lead many people. And to be honest with you, if I could just literally come off the stage and I could get real close to you and we could have kind of like a one-on-one conversation. There are two questions that I would ask you, and the two questions I'm about to ask you will really determine how successful you're going to be in this business, without any question. These are the two questions. It's not like there's 3 or there's 4 or there's 7. There's 2, okay? Just trust me on this. I'm an old man. I know this. I've been around the block a few times. And there are 2 questions that if you can answer in a positive way about yourself, you're going to be very successful. And if you really cannot answer that in a positive way, to be honest with you, you're not going to be near as successful as you would like to be. The first question is very simple. What are you doing to develop yourself? And if you'd say, my gosh, John, I'll tell you right now, I'm doing a lot to develop myself. I've got a personal growth plan, and I'm intentional in this, and I'm doing this on a daily deal. If you could say that to me, then I'd say, hey, we're in good shape here. We're in good shape, because that's the key. You know, what are you doing to develop yourself? And by the way, the reason that's first is not because you want to be selfish. It's kind of like almost a selfish question. The person says, well, why do I start with myself? The reason you start with yourself is because you cannot give what you do not have. So you better start with yourself. Because if you're leading others and have nothing to give them, nothing to share with them, nothing to teach them, then I can promise you, you'll never be what you want to be as a leader. And I can promise you that after 40 years of personal growth, the secret of any success, if I've had any success at all, the secret of that success has been personal growth in my life. And growth has literally placed me where I am. So what are you doing to develop yourself? It's a huge question. And the 15 laws of 15 laws of personal growth, basically these laws are all about developing yourself and developing the second question, what are you doing to develop others? You see, on the first question, you're foundational for your future. The second question is all about compounding, multiplication. That's where you build a huge business, when you know how to develop other people. And what we have to understand about the law of intentionality is that you cannot develop yourself and you cannot develop your people unless you're intentional. And I discovered that in my 20s when I sat down and had breakfast with a guy named Kirk Campmeyer at the Holiday Inn in Lancaster, Ohio, and he asked me the question, John, do you have a plan for personal growth in your life? Didn't have a plan. Didn't know I was supposed to have a plan. Nobody ever told me I was supposed to have a plan. I graduated. I was working hard, doing my very best to reach my potential. But nobody ever walked in my life until Kirk Campmeyer did and said, John, do you have a plan for personal growth in your life? And I didn't have one. I was embarrassed. I thought back then I had to have answers. And so I acted as if I did, and that didn't really work very long. I was kind of like a plane circling an airfield trying to come in for a landing. Found I just shut up and landed that plane. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget, he said, you don't have a plan, do you? And I said, no, I don't have a plan. And then he said to me, John, growth is not automatic. If you're going to have to grow, you're going to have to grow on purpose. That day, my life was changed. What Kurt was saying is, if you're going to grow, you have to be intentional. I mean, it starts with me. So look at the person you're seated beside and just say to them, this will kind of be like a get acquainted time with him. Just look at him and say, you really need to improve. Go ahead and tell me that, right? You really need to. Now, wasn't that fun? Wasn't that fun? Isn't it fun just look at somebody and say, you know what, you really need to improve? Yeah, it just rolls naturally off the tongue. Now look right back at him and say, I need to improve. Now, you said that with a lot less enthusiasm. I mean, did you hear that? I mean, when I said, tell the other person you need to improve, I mean, it was loud. You need to improve. Yeah, well, yeah. I need to improve. I need to improve. Now, the problem is we have what I call growth gaps. The reason that we're not intentional in our growing is there are just some gaps that keep us from getting to where we need to go. And I'm going to give you about a half a dozen of them really quickly. The first one is the assumption gap. And the assumption gap just basically says, I assume that I'll grow automatically. You see, most people, they live by assumption. 99% of people today are just assuming, that somehow they'll get better. Very sad, folks, very sad. Because let me tell you something about assumption. Assumption is a huge disappointment in life. You show me a person that assumes, and I'll show you a person that almost daily is disappointed. So, the first gap is a gap that leaves many people short, and that's just the pure assumption gap. The second one is the knowledge gap. And the knowledge gap is basically, I don't know how to grow. And we've all been there. In other words, okay, I know that I need to be intentional in my growth, but I really don't know how to grow. I've been there. Now, I brought something with me today that's very special. It's a kit, and I'm just so pleased to have this because this kit is very important to me. Now it cost me $799, and I got this kit. I got this kit back in the 1970s. Okay, and this was my first personal growth kit. It's Dynamics of Personal Goal Setting by Paul Meyer, Personal Success Planner, and I was so excited. It cost $799. Now you have to understand, I made about $800 a month. So get the picture. It took me 6 months to buy this kit. I saved up. We didn't have credit cards back then, and I just saved up and worked hard. And it took me 6 months before I had enough cash to buy this kit. And I was so excited when I got it. And I mean, I opened it all up, and this is just amazing. You'll just see some things here that just crack you up. It had, for some of you young people who've never seen this before, they're called cassette tapes. And I remember taking the first cassette tape out, putting it on my little cassette player, opening this up. Oh my gosh, this was so wonderful. That wasn't. They had page by page plans. I go through the plans and listen to the tapes and go through the plans, listen to the tape, go to the plans, listen to the tape. This was my first growth experience. And the ROI on this $799 kit, it's worth millions of dollars to me. Yeah, you heard me right. Millions of dollars. And experiences and a lifetime of growth. And what's interesting is, now here's what I want you to hear. The value of this kit, the content was good, but that wasn't the value. The content was good. But as I look back now, I say, what made this so special? What made this so special is very simple. This is the kit that got me started. Hear me out. The value of what you do for people is not so much what you give to them as much as it challenges them to get started. Getting started is absolutely the key to life. And by the time I finished going through this personal growth kit, by the time that was all finished, I had 6 months of day in, day out personal growth. And what it did is it developed a habit in my life. And by the time I finished with that kit, now I'm used to spending time every day in personal growth. It got me started. I mean, this is worth this whole lesson if you can just get this. The reason I'm so passionate about personal growth is personal growth keeps me prepared. In other words, if I'm continually growing, I continue developing myself, and I'm continually learning, and I'm continually doing new things and going to another step higher, can I tell you what that is? That constant growth is the preparation for the opportunity. So when the opportunity comes, here's the way. You don't go into an opportunity, you grow into an opportunity. And so I'm passionate about personal growth because for that person who says, wow, I had an opportunity, I wasn't ready. If you're growing, you're always ready. Because after I intentionally started growing, I made a commitment to grow as a leader. I started writing, I became an author. I developed growth resources for other people. I founded my first company. I began training conferences. Everything I can think of that has ever been good in my life was a result of the fact that I started personal growth in my life. I know I'm known for leadership. I understand that. But my passion in life, more than anything else, is personal growth. Because if you grow personally, you can be a great leader. But if you don't grow personally, you can't be a good leader. Everything in life that you're ever going to want is based upon your ability to develop yourself. So Kurt Kampmeyer said, John, you can't just accidentally grow. You got to grow on purpose. And so I started. And I got to thinking yesterday when I was getting ready to, kind of my last preparation for this lesson, I got started. And guess what? When I got started, let me tell you what I didn't have. I didn't have experience. I didn't have knowledge. I did not have a model. I did not have a mentor. I did not have a plan. I did not have a fellow traveler. I did not have resources. I did not have money. I did not have a growth environment. But I got started. You don't stop or not start because of what you don't have. You don't start because you don't realize yet that the fruit of everything good in life begins with a challenge. There's nothing easy in life, worthwhile in life. Everything is uphill that's worthwhile. And it's not going to come to you, and it's not going to fall in your lap, and it's not going to be something that, oh my gosh, it just was so simple. It's always going to be difficult.
This quote you have in the book that says, if you see yourself as a loser, you won't play like a winner. If you see yourself as a winner, you won't play like a loser. What advice do you give to someone having a hard time seeing themselves as a winner? How do you get them first to see themselves as a winner so they can start playing like a winner?
Yeah, so the concept is this, to start. Success is an identity process, and you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. Mm-hmm. And so one of the first things we want to do is to update our identity. Just like you update the software on your iPhone, you want to update your own personal identity. Tell people you are not who you are. You are who you were born to be. And you are also not what you did. You are what you repeatedly do. We all make mistakes, but you can update your identity and create new habits, new patterns, new thought patterns. So I'll share a quick story of a dear friend of mine. You want to know what's interesting, Mark? This dear friend of mine, his name's Jaime Molina, lives out in Southern California, one of the sweetest men you'll ever meet. The last time Jaime and I were together, by the way, was in Orlando at the certification for the John Maxwell coaches. That's okay. We actually have a selfie with him together. That's the last time we were together. So he's an avid John Maxwell fan as well. The only person sweeter, by the way, than Jaime is his wife, Ramona. They're very devout in their Catholic faith. Jaime's in the financial services industry. He has 4 beautiful daughters. You would want your daughter to marry Jaime. Jaime's one of those kind of men, just a good man. So one of the things he does is he works with the troubled youth in his community. And he tells the youth about a story about a man named E9400. E9400 was born on a border town with Mexico and the States in Texas, El Paso. At age 8, he was introduced to alcohol. At age 9, he was sexually abused and became sexually active at age 9. At age 14, he got into hard drugs. At 15, he became a mule for the cartel. At age 24, he was convicted of 11 federal felonies and served multiple years in San Quentin. Now, Mark, you don't want to serve prison time anywhere, but you definitely don't want to serve prison in San Quentin. This is a really, really, really terrible place where the harshest rapists and the harshest murderers go to serve their time. So Jaime asked the students, he says, let me ask you a question. What do you think happened to E9400? Like, Mark, if we were doing a poll, right, with our listeners, we do a poll. Hey, is he an alcoholic? Is he on drugs? Is he in prison? Is he dead? Is he living his best life? Like, what are the odds of these different things? Remember, at age 8, he is introduced to alcohol. 9, he gets abused and becomes sexually active. 14's on hard drugs. 15's a mule. Serves in San Quentin through all of his 20s. What would be the odds? Well, one day he says to the students, he says, let me ask you a question. He goes, you guys remember me telling about E9400? They go, yeah. He goes, I got a special guest here today. And they're like, what? And he goes, E9400 came here. He goes, let me go grab him in the hallway and grab him. Walks out, shuts the door behind him. The kids look around like, the guy, this is that story of this man he's told us about. So Jaime walks in, but it's just Jaime, shuts the door, walks to the front room. They're thinking, where's E9400? And he says, I am E9400. And my friends, Jaime Molina, you are not what you did. You are what you repeatedly do, and you are not who you are. You are who you were born to become. Jaime is not E9400. E9400 was his prison number. It was a 6-digit prison number. That was his identity. That's who he was. That's how he was known for many, many, many years of his life. That's not who he is. Who he is the person he was born to be, which is he was born to be Jaime Molina, the father of 4, the man that runs his financial services business, the man that's a devoted husband, the man that's devoted in his faith, the man that's devoted to his friends. That's who he was born to be. So you start saying, who am I really? And you start updating this. So James Clear, I'll give you an example. James Clear wrote the book, Atomic Habits. I know he just spoke. I think it was that Live to Lead he just spoke at? I know
it was at IMC in August, and he was on the podcast about a month and a half, 2 months ago.
So he tells a story in Atomic Habits about 2 boys. One stole the candy, and he says to the first child, did you steal the candy? This little boy said, I didn't steal it. They said to the second child, did you steal the candy? The little boy said, I don't steal. I didn't steal is an action. I don't steal is an identity. You can update this stuff and say, who is the person I was born to be, and start acting as that one today.
So I just got to pause. I am thoroughly, and I will tell you this when we're done, I am so thoroughly enjoying this. I want all of you that listen, and we have a lot of people that work out, drive, commute while they're listening. You said 2 things that cannot be overlooked, and I don't have time to teach them. Justin has just killed it in teaching them. But one is update your identity. And every one of us need to update our identity. Even if your identity that you're holding is pretty good, if it's stale, you need to still update your identity. I don't care if it's good. I don't care if it's great. I don't care if you're living in yesterday's success. It's time to update your identity. Hey, welcome back, podcast listeners, podcast viewers. As John was teaching today, I was reminded of the John Wooden quote that says, be more concerned with your character than your reputation. Your character is what you really are. Your reputation is merely what others think you are. And Tracy, truly, I love all of my podcast co-hosts. I love guests like we've had recently. But if anybody could talk to us and share with me and be able to talk authentically about being bigger on the inside than the outside. And again, no reflection to my other co-hosts, but Tracy, when I think of our friendship, partnership, relationship, you are bigger on the inside than the outside. And I'm not just saying that. I say powerful things about all my co-hosts because John and I are blessed with great people around us. But Tracy, I'm really excited about this because I really do believe you have disciplined yourself, that despite all the cameras you've looked into, all the businesses you've built, you are passionate about being bigger on the inside. In fact, so much so that when you and I first started listening to John, you went, Mark, I love this subject matter. And isn't it true? Very few people have the ability to talk about this with the credibility that John Maxwell has.
It's so true. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for that very nice compliment. I
am honored by those words so much. But I do love this because we do have a mentor who really has made this his whole life platform. And I believe the same about you, Mark. We have an inside out focus. And so that has been something that we have talked about often. And so when this landed on in my box, with this as the title, I was like, yes, we are. I'm so excited to discuss this. But at the same time, as I was listening, I thought, what excites me the most is the listeners who I know are on the other side of this screen or in their car or in their home or working out, listening, however you're listening to this podcast. And I know that this was like, that little emoji where it's like a mind blowing, like, yes. I know that there were leaders that were like, their minds were just blown, because what happens when you are growing up and your mind is formulating around what a leader is? It is your parents. It is your teachers. It is the adults in your life that have a title. Right. And that your whole ideas about leadership are formulated around when you are in a position of authority and you have a title. You're the parent, you're the teacher, you're the boss, you're the CEO, you're the person in charge, you're the owner. And suddenly what John just did is he flipped the script. And what we're talking about today is he says it's not about the title. It's not about that at all. It's actually, that's exterior. It's actually about who you are today. So buckle up, my friends. We are going to be breaking down, and hopefully this will be one that you listen to over and over again as you are really wrapping your mind around the new idea of what it is to be a true leader. And that is something that every single person can do, whether you are a kid listening in the car with your parents and you are 9 years old. This is something you can start to listen to and start to work on today, working on who you are on the inside.
So, Tracy, before we jump in, and I know we have questions, we're going to break down what John has said. But let me say this, and I'm going to throw you a curveball that I didn't talk to you about in the pre-conversation. What is it that makes this your favorite subject that we talk about? When people ask me all the time, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to answer that question so you kind of can formulate, that is the question I'm coming to you with, which is, why is this so indelibly impressed upon you as one of the most important topics that John Maxwell ever addresses? That's my question back to you. You didn't even think about it. You didn't script that, but that's the question, because you and I do share a passion for this subject. In fact, when people ask me all the time, what's your favorite Maxwell book? It's Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Hands down, you want to know my favorite book? It was the first book that I read. It's the first book that I read and then put up on a shelf and didn't put into practice. It's the first book that I brought back when I was given a chance to lead again and said, this time I will read this book consistently throughout the rest of my life. So if I don't read this book once a year, I read it at least every 2 years. It's in my life plan. I pick up the book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. Why? Every one of us have a why. We have a favorite little sucker stick. We're going to find out Tracy's in just a minute, but podcast viewers, podcast listeners, mine is because I read the book the first time. I was given an opportunity to develop my character, my ability to lead and be bigger on the inside, and I neglected it. And my outside grew exponentially in my 20s. My early 20s, I accomplished things no other leader in our organization had ever accomplished at my age. I was elected as the leader. I was leading camps. I was doing all these things with young people and neglected to lead myself. And I crashed and burned. I found myself at 29 unable to sustain the external influence that I had because I had no internal fortitude. You want to know why I'm passionate about this subject? Because I don't want to repeat that same mistake. I am passionate about ensuring that the internal leader is capable of whatever the external leader accomplishes. And I am passionate about that. So that's my source. That's my story. Tracy, why do you think this is one of your favorite topics?
I can tell you right away that it sets each one of us apart as unique, because we all have gifts and talents. We all have something that we are uniquely crafted that we can do. And we could all kind of separate into groups about what we bring to the team. We talk about Pat Lencioni's book, The 6 Working Geniuses, 6 Types of Working Genius. And we could categorize us all in the things that we bring to the team. But when you talk about inside out leadership,
what truly makes us unique is the individual parts of us that make us us. The part that makes me, the part that makes you, the listener, you, the part that makes Mark Cole, part that makes John Maxwell, is uniquely just us. There will only ever be one of you, and there will only ever be one of me. Beautiful. And so if we learn to become, if we implement these tools, it takes away a competitive piece that really is, you get into your very own lane. And when I started listening to John, it took away that competitive fear, maybe, that you were competing against other people, and it puts you into a lane of completing other people. When you become the very best version of yourself, then it made me learn to, if I focus on me, then I take my focus off of competing against other people. And when I become the best version of myself in the areas of humility and in the areas that we are going to talk about, the credibility checklist, then I really enjoy showing up in the different areas of my life, because I'm getting better, and I can mark all the ways that I'm growing in those areas. And John left a very, in each of his books, yes, the Developing the Leader Within You, but if you look in every one of his books, you are going to see areas where you yourself can develop as your unique self and show up in the areas where you show up in your family, in your community, in your place of work, in your place of worship, if you have that. If all the areas that you show up, you can show up as the next best version of yourself. And that lights me up, because when you see someone showing up as their best unique self, they are living their best version of themselves, and they bring their best. And so that, to me, the sky is the limit of growth, and that becomes endless. So I'm excited to get into this.
Let's do it.
And let's do it. So he talks about what inside out leaders are, and he kind of hops on a bunch of different things before he gets to the checklist. But one of the things that he talked about is, like, if you value people above position, and I kind of hit on that. And then he talks about you can't inspire other people unless you are inspired by other people. And I really love that.
Now we're going back, what are we going back? We're going back 42 years, 43 years. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read to you what I wrote in that little chapter that day about what a problem is and what does it look like. So I said, first of all, in English, obviously not in Spanish, but in English, the letter P that starts with the problems, it stands for the fact that they are predictors. Problems move us. The question is not, when crisis comes, are we moved? The question is, where did we move to? Did we swim upstream and better ourselves, or did we drift to an undesired location? But problems move us. They may move you, they move me, they get us out of our comfort zone. The reason people don't like problems is problems don't let you stay the same. They require you to make a decision. They require you and I to do something with whatever problem it is. So when you think of a problem, it's a predictor. The second thing that I want you to know about a problem is that it's a reminder. And what it reminds you and me is the fact that life is difficult, that life is not easy, that you're going to have to work to achieve what you want to work, that there's no such thing as coasting your way to success. If you saw a person on the top of the mountain of success and you asked them how they got there, they wouldn't look at you and say, I have no clue. They'd say, wow, took a long time. It was a lot of hard work. Well, problems are reminders to all of us that leadership's not easy. Leading people isn't always easy. Every one of us have people in our organization that they have problems, and they sometimes become problems. They're just good, healthy reminders that leadership is tough, and so is life. But the letter O in the word problems means that there are opportunities. And that is huge. I don't want you to miss this. Almost every opportunity that I've ever had in my life that has been a big one came to me as a problem. And what are you going to do about that? And how are you going to change that? When I started my international leadership program, I did so because when I would travel internationally, I would see that people didn't understand leadership. And so I finally one day said, well, I think I got I think I've got to go travel and help people understand that. And it opened up an amazing work until we've trained leaders in every country of the world. And oh my gosh, it's been phenomenal what we've received as far as a return. But it began as a problem. Now it was an opportunity. The letter B in problems means that letters are blessings. And what I mean by that is very simple. They're kind of wake-up calls for us. There's a tendency for us just to, coast, just kind of, be an automatic. Automatic is just not good, but people love automatic. I mean, in automatic, you don't have to think. You can let your habits kind of take control, and you don't have to be creative. And we do this the same way, and we go to the same place. People love automatic. And one of the beautiful things about problems is they get us out of automatic. They kick us, they kick us over the fence to a territory. They kick us over the fence to a territory that we didn't even want to go. But once we get there, we realize, the blessings that they are going to be in our life. The letter L in problems stands for the fact that they're lessons. Every problem has a lesson to teach us. In fact, when I interview successful people, and I ask them, what's the greatest lesson you've ever learned? Almost every time, not every time, but almost every time, they'll talk about a failure in their life. They'll talk about a very difficult, dark period, and they'll say, it was in that time that I became a person of character. It was in that time where I began to make the changes that I need to make. So problems are lessons. The letter E in the word problems is problems are everywhere. I'm always amazed at when people say, well, if I could just leave this company and go over there, it's this grass is greener on the other side type of thinking. And I just want you to know that problems are everywhere. You can't escape them. In fact, there's an expression I love that says, no matter where you are, there you are. And I watch people sometimes, they even try to get away from themselves. Just understand, I've got problems, you've got problems, all God's children. We got problems. Everybody has problems. So it's not like something I can do or someplace I can go that'll help me have less problems. It's life. The letter M in problems stands for messages. They're messages. It's like the dashboard of a car. The red light comes on. Okay, we got an oil problem. Or it's sending us a signal that we need to kind of be aware of. It's saying, John, pay attention to this. And problems do that to us. They're messages. They're messages to us that are kind of forerunners that be ready, be prepared, anticipate difficulty. And then the last letter in the word problems is the letter S, and that means they're solvable. And I love that. I love that very much. I don't know what problem you have right now, but let me just say this to you. There's always an answer. I'm always amazed at people say, well, there's just no answer. Oh, there's always an answer. Now, maybe you haven't found it, but there's always an answer. And when you have the mindset that there's always an answer, what do? You stay in the game. Because you're looking for the answer. In fact, let me tell you this, there's not only always an answer, there's usually more than one answer. In other words, whatever I'm doing, to be honest with you, there's probably even a better way of doing what I'm doing. So I never stay satisfied. I just say, there's an answer, I'm going to find it out, and there's probably even a better answer. And that allows me to really lead well. I just close with this thought. You can't moan and lead at the same time. You really can't. And when you moan as a leader, who wants to be on a moaning leaders team? So next time you look at problems, look at it from the perspective I gave you, and look at them and kind of say, hey, I'm ready to tackle that problem. It'll make you a better person, and it'll make you a better businessman. It'll make you more successful. Until next month, love and blessings.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.